A gym bro comparing to another gym bro. When you're on social media looking at all the gym bros in your feed, I see a king aspiring to be another king. And now, don't get me wrong, this isn't bad at all, especially if you're looking at these people for inspiration. But if you're out here trying to make comparisons on the gains they have made and on the gains that you have made, and you start complaining or get a huge ego boost from it, that's when it's wrong. Because when you do make a comparison, are you really comparing an apple to an apple? So next time when you do go to compare, when you're on your phone after a huge cheat meal and you've got just a gut sticking out and the first dude on your feed is completely shredded, don't feel bad about yourself. And vice versa, don't get a huge ego boost when you see someone in the gym who's been training for 10 years and you've trained only for half the time but look twice as big.
Actually, no, that might be good.
Here are the factors that you need to consider when you do make a comparison. That way, if you follow this criteria, you know whether you're truly making a fair comparison. The first factor being training age. This is quite self-explanatory. The longer you've been training in the gym, on average, you will see more results. I mean, it makes more sense. Someone who spent 3 years in the gym compared to someone who's only spent 3 months in the gym, the person who's been training for 3 years has lifted 12 times the amount of weights, I think, if my math is right. So you would expect much more gains because more resistance training, more eating well, more sleeping well, all those factors combined, they'll obviously make more gains. So if you're wondering why you don't look like that dude who's been training for 5 years and you've only been training for 5 months, that's where the comparison stops. The second point being holistic dedication. And that's why for the previous point I said on average, because sometimes you might have a person or you might find yourself or someone else who's actually trained in the gym less than you, or you've trained less than them and you've still made better gains. And the reason being is you can't just turn up to the gym and do whatever you like. Whatever you put in, that same amount of effort will be rewarded. You put more effort into the gym, you see more results. By staying consistent with your workouts, not having a cheat day every other day, and actually putting some effort to try get a full night's rest will take you a long way in seeing quicker gains. That's why it's called holistic. It isn't just about working out. It's about stress management, sleep, how well you eat, what you eat. Like, you could be very dedicated in the gym, following the exact program, what you need to follow. But when it comes to eating, you just eat frozen food. How is it going to work out? One's got to complement another. The third factor is genetics. And this is quite a big factor because it incorporates a lot of things. If you were to take the first two factors and person A and person B, they've both been training for the same amount of time and they've both been equally dedicated. Unfortunately, or fortunate if you're lucky, the person with better genetics will obviously grow more muscle. And you can't really blame anyone apart from your parents, or if you're in the lucky group, thank your parents a lot. Genetics is a very huge factor, but the reason why you see more gains if you're genetically gifted is, for example, when you're on a bulk, you may find it difficult to gain fat, but find it very easy to gain muscle. That's a good factor. Or even the way you distribute your fat, it's all over your body rather than in your midsection, so your abs get covered. Or it might be something like where your muscle inserts onto your bone. Is it a short muscle belly or is it a long one? Shorter ones have bigger peaks, so when you go to do that bicep pose, are you getting a huger peak or are you getting no peak at all? And before you do go blaming your genetics, a rule of thumb is train 5 years, dedicated, smart, and put in the work. And if you still haven't gained anything, or you probably become worse, that's when you can blame your genetics. The fourth one is training smart. And no doubt, if someone is dedicated, naturally they'll also put in the time to do their research, not only about working out, but about everything else, the whole package. And which means they'll be training, eating, and living in the smartest way to optimize their gains. But in the rare circumstance when people are super dedicated, but they don't spend time to actually gain knowledge, you could have an example where someone does a 400-meter sprint before every leg day because they're thinking more fatigue for your hamstrings and quads means more gains. But they don't understand that cardio and actual resistance training has two different adaptations on your quads. So that's just a subtopic that should be covered. If you are dedicated, you train smart, unless you're one of those guys who are doing hill sprints before your leg day and only going to the hospital. The leaner you are, the smaller you'll be, because the less total mass you'll have. Mass is comprised of, you've got your muscle mass, you've got your bone mass, you've got your water mass, like, when you feel puffy, your water is circulating in your cheeks, you're holding it in your stomach, so that's water retention. And you also got your fat mass. And if you get leaner, you're losing the fat, which means you obviously be smaller. But that doesn't really matter, because when you're on your feed and you're scrolling and you're taking a photo of yourself, it doesn't really matter how big you look, it matters how defined you are. Choosing the right angles will mean even Kevin Hart can look 6 foot. What I'm trying to say is, if you are leaner, yes, you will be smaller, but that doesn't really matter. You look more defined, you have more striations, your veins will be popping out. The definition of, you'll see a clear bicep peak, the chest peak, full set of abs, your quad teardrop, all those, the back V-taper, the crevices on your back, you'll see all those tiny, minute details. And that's what makes you look much bigger. So if you were to take a photo of yourself at 20% body fat and then one at 12% body fat in the same place, same location, all the other factors like lighting, time of day, whether you ate or not, all of that was the same. And you took one at 20% body fat, one at 12. You ask someone to compare both and ask which one you look bigger in. Even though you probably weigh more and you're bigger in that 20% photo because you fill out, your sleeves more and everything, the person will actually say the 12% body fat, because the striations, the definition, the leanness will make you pop out bigger. And the final one is the actual photo tweaking. Well, did you have a pump? Which means before the photo shoot, did you work out? And of course, anyone will want a pump before. If you want to look your biggest, you're obviously going to have a pump. But did you take electrolytes? So if you take sodium, potassium, that could increase your pump. Did you have a tan on? That's why all Olympia bodybuilders or anyone who steps on show usually has a tan, because a tan makes you pop out more, makes you look bigger, just that tiny bit, but it will make a difference. Were you fasted? Were you using oils? All those factors contribute in some portion to the actual photo. Not to mention the angle of the photo, the camera, Photoshop, and all of those. And because of that, all these factors combined, though they're small on its own, actually make the most difference when it comes to the photo. Not really the gains, like if you go to the actual person, they can't control all these factors, but in that photo that you see on the feed, on Insta, that mainly be tweaked by all these other factors. And that's why it becomes very difficult to trust photos, because of all these other factors. Some of which are definitely okay, like you can have a pump before you work out. Who wouldn't want to have a pump before taking a photo? Things like that are okay, but things like photoshopping to increase the size of your arms and all that, that's where it's not on. Hopefully you have a better understanding of what makes a photo pop, it makes that physique pop, and all the factors that come into play. And if you want to build a huger physique, one of the first steps and one of the most important steps is definitely going on a bulk to build that mass foundation. Click on my video either here or here, whichever one it is, which will give you the best rate that you can bulk at. And by bulking at this rate, you can gain muscle the fastest, as well as minimize fat gain the most. So most muscle gain to least fat gain, and gaining at the fastest rate possible for you. It only takes a minute, but it'll change the amount of muscle you'll gain on your next bulk. That's all, boys. May the gains be with you, and see you in the next one.